A professional badminton smash requires a player to leap into the air, contort their body, and snap a racket forward in a fraction of a second. Under test conditions, that shuttlecock can leave the racket traveling over 560 kilometers per hour. This chart compares the top recorded projectile speeds of major racket sports. While a tennis serve tops out around 263 kilometers per hour and squash reaches about 280, the badminton smash easily doubles those figures. At the elite level, the sport is defined by lightning-fast reflexes and aggression. Players are locked in a constant drive to overpower their opponent, returning strikes so fast the human eye struggles to track them. But the high-velocity sport we see today is a historical anomaly. For almost 2,000 years, hitting a feathered projectile was driven by a philosophy of total cooperation. Around 500 BC, people in ancient China played a game called zhangzi. The object was simple. Keep this brightly feathered, weighted projectile airborne using only your feet. Over centuries, the core idea of keeping a feather in the air migrated. Children in ancient Greece and Egypt started using small paddles to hit the shuttle, and by the 1500s, a version called Battledore and Shuttlecock had spread across Europe. These early versions shared strict similarities in what they lacked. There were no official courts to play on, there were no nets to divide the players, and nobody kept score. The entire objective was the pass. Two people stood opposite each other, working together against gravity to see how many times they could hit the shuttle back and forth before it touched the ground. This cooperative dynamic, played for fun by children and royalty for generations, eventually encountered a structural shift that would change the nature of the game entirely. In the 1860s, the city of Poona in British India became the site of this transition. British Army officers stationed in Poona began playing the local version of the shuttlecock game, but they introduced a critical intervention. They pulled a physical net directly across the center of the play area. The net forced a new style of play. By physically dividing the participants, the game moved from a shared circle into two distinct opposing territories. The officers followed the net by drawing defined court boundaries on the ground and, for the first time, implementing a competitive scoring system. They called this new game Poona. By keeping score across a net, gravity was no longer a common enemy to defeat together. It became a tool to be used against the person standing across from you. When their tours of duty ended, those British officers returned home, bringing the competitive rules of Poona with them to England. In 1873, the game was demonstrated for guests at the Duke of Beaufort's country estate, Badminton House. The guests associated the game with the location, and the sport permanently adopted the estate's name. The localized rules of Poona were soon codified into an official institution. In 1893, the Badminton Association of England published the first unified rulebook. This top-down vector schematic illustrates the outcome of that 1893 rulebook. It mapped out exact court dimensions and established a standardized net height for all future matches. These parameters were globally validated just 6 years later with the launch of the first All-England Open Badminton Championships. This standardization permanently locked the sport into its competitive form. The cooperative past was gone, replaced by a system of high-stakes adversarial play. Once scoring points was the sole focus, players immediately sought an offensive advantage. Winning required faster swing speeds and harder hits. But early players hit a physical limit. Rackets made of heavy wood and natural gut created massive drag and high weight, restricting how fast a human arm could naturally swing. This side-by-side comparison reveals the sport's material evolution. Manufacturers replaced wooden frames with synthetic strings and ultra-lightweight carbon fiber, dropping the weight to just 70 to 90 grams. By massively reducing mass, players generate blistering swing velocities with the same physical effort. The 348-mile-per-hour smash of today is the culmination of over a century of engineering, all chasing the competitive advantage first created by the scoring rules of the 1800s. Armed with faster equipment and a governing world federation established in 1934, the sport expanded globally, eventually becoming an official Olympic medal sport in 1992. This expansion ultimately brought the sport back to its geographic roots. Today, the international stage is dominated by countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and China, returning to the continent where early feathered shuttlecocks were first played. At its core, the object being hit today is the same feathered concept that ancient civilizations used for recreation 2 millennia ago. The feathers haven't changed, but our interaction with them has. Through cultural cross-pollination and a century of engineering, a shared effort to keep a feather airborne was ultimately transformed into the fastest racket sport in human history.